Hey everybody. So today for Black History Month, I am sharing with you my personal heroes. And today I want to look at the life of Phyllis Wheatley, who was a poet, an incredible woman who died at a very young age. But Phyllis Wheatley has always been one of my personal heroes, and so it's an honor for me to pay tribute to her life. Phyllis Wheatley was born in West Africa, and she was I'm trying to pull up my. She was born in West Africa around 1753, and Phyllis was kidnapped and enslaved. Phyllis was kidnapped and enslaved at the age of 7. She was transported from West Africa to Boston, where she was purchased by the Wheatley family. Almost immediately, they recognized uh, Phyllis potential and provided her with an education that was unusual for a slave in that period. Phyllis was tutored by her daughter, by the Wheatley's daughter, Mary, and she quickly mastered the language of English, Latin, Greek, and along with that, various classical works. Uh, they recognized that Phyllis had a precocious intellect, and this began to attract attention around the literary and the social circles of Boston. By her early teens, she had become a prominent figure in Boston, and she was already composing poetry, drawing inspiration from classical literature, Enlightenment ideas, and the fight against slavery. Now, this is the thing that I've always loved about Phyllis is, of course, her creative gifts as a poet and a writer, but then to look at how she thrived in the institution of slavery before the United States even became a sovereign nation itself. So at the age of 20, uh, Phyllis reached a zenith when she published her first collection of poems titled Poems on Various Subjects, Religious and Moral. That was, of course, in 1773. And this achievement marked a significant milestone in American literature as Phyllis became the first African American and one of the first women in the colonies to publish a book. Her poems reflected a deep engagement with classical literature. She wrote from Christian themes. Her poetry challenged prevailing notions about the intellectual capacities of enslaved individuals. Notice how Phyllis was tearing down barriers because there were still many Caucasian and European Americans who believed that Africans were ignorant, cannibals, cannibalistic, incapable of intelligence. And Phyllis shattered all of these racist and presidential ideas. Y'all forgive me for how I'm struggling today. And so in the midst of one of her most powerful poems is titled "On Messengers, Hussy and Coffin," and she writes, I quote, "While hapless Afric sons, their steps restrained, in sable chains beneath a burning ray, with secret longings, sigh for freedom's reign, nor dare unfold their wishes to the day," unquote. So even though Phyllis enjoyed great success and a growing reputation throughout the colonies. She was not a woman without struggles. She often faced skepticism and prejudice. Her works actually had to be authenticated by prominent figures in Boston, including political leaders and clergy, to prove that an African woman could produce such sophisticated poetry. And despite the acknowledgement of her talent, Phyllis continued to grapple with the contradiction of her existence, a gifted poet who is a slave. And so she critiqued slavery in her writings, but she continued to be a slave. And despite this contradiction, Phyllis utilized her platform to advocate to become an abolitionist. Isn't that's a great contradiction? A slave herself, but she's using her voice to fight for not only her freedom, but for the freedom of her people. She corresponded regularly with leading American figures like Benjamin Franklin and John Adams. And so Phyllis Wheatley poetry became a powerful tool for advocacy for the African people who were slaves in America. She criticized the institution of slavery and the hypocrisy of a nation that was striving for liberty and freedom itself while holding millions in chains. And her words urge readers to reconsider the morality of enslaving human beings. Willis' advocacy for abolition was a bold and courageous stance, considering the political climate of her day. She refused to give in. She refused to play games with the powers that be. She refused to compromise. She challenged the norms of her society, and she became really a pioneer for other African American writers and intellectuals. She was a woman of great courage and intellect who provided a foundation for many other Blacks to follow her, such as Benjamin Banneker. She influenced later generations of advocates, okay, who fought for the emancipation and civil rights of America. And so, in a sense, Phyllis Wheatley becomes the mother whose writing, although it would be another 100 years, it was her writings that created a cultural revolution that became the Civil War in 1861. So she faced great adversity as a Black woman, as a slave. Eventually, she was freed by the Wheatley family. She defied expectations. She showcased her intellectual capabilities. She left an indelible mark on American literature. And this is why Phyllis Wheatley is a hero of mine. Tragically, she died at the age of 31. After she was set free, she married a free Black man. But in spite of her fame, this couple languished in poverty. And her husband eventually was sentenced to debtor's prison, which was a reality in the 18th century. Phyllis had to go to work as a maid. She gave birth to 2 children, and at the age of 31, she developed pneumonia while giving birth to her second child, a daughter who died the same day. And thus end the short but well-accomplished life of Phyllis Wheatley, my hero. I hope you've enjoyed me sharing this with you, the record of her life. And as we celebrate Black America, listen, the history of Black Americans in America is not just our history. It is the history of America. People like Phyllis Wheatley, her accomplishments is what helped make this country what it is becoming, because we're still not there. But her accomplishments as a poet, an abolitionist, an intellectual, helped create the freedom that we now enjoy in this great nation. Take care, everybody.